This morning I'm speaking to Mr. Jaco Voljoen. Jaco is currently the CEO of a prominent banking group in Africa. But I think, Jaco, perhaps you can introduce yourself for me in about a few seconds, please.
Thanks, Jan. Morning, everyone. I'm Jaco Voljoen. I'm the CEO of First Capital Bank in Malawi. As Jan has said, we're a regional bank. We're in 5 countries, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Mozambique. And then we've got our group based out of Mauritius. I like the word prominent. We're not like your bigger banks, but I'm sure we'll talk about it later on. But being a regional bank has got some benefits, being slightly smaller, a little bit closer to customers, nimble, those type of things. Yeah. But yeah, I'm currently in Malawi. I've been for 7 years in Botswana before I came here for the same group.
So I've got about 3 questions that I want to ask you. And the first one is, if we look at Africa, is there opportunity in Africa?
I think there's huge opportunity in Africa. As I said, if you talk to people out of Europe or America, a lot of them are looking at Africa because of the opportunity that's there. There's obviously, as I said, it's just how you approach that opportunity, but huge opportunities in Africa, whether it's in banking, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in services, production, manufacturing. I'm really excited about opportunities in Africa. I think that's the next phase of the world. I think a lot of opportunities or things will actually move into Africa, to be quite honest. So yeah, as I said, even if I can use a practical example, our banking group started 25 years ago in Malawi. And my previous experience in Botswana, that bank started as late as 2008, right when the credit crunch happened. Now everybody will say a country like Botswana has got 2 million people, they've got 7 commercial banks already, it's credit crunch, and yet this bank started, and they've been able to make profit every single year since they've started. They've been making good money, returns in excess of 15-20% for shareholders. If people think there's no opportunity, then I think they have to really sort of think twice.
So the results show the success. Jaco, what are some of the to grasp that opportunity, to harness it? What do you need to do different in Africa than in the rest of the world?
I wish I had the spot-on answer for that one. I think there are a few things. You have to understand that it's different. There's no one size fits all, in my view. So you can't have, if something works in South Africa, it's going to work in Botswana and Malawi and wherever. And I think it also doesn't mean that if something works in Malawi, it will work in South Africa. And there's enough examples of that. So the key thing is to understand that every market is unique. I think you also need to show respect for the environment, whether it's legal environment, regulatory environment. Ultimately, things are there for a reason. And as I said, one has to show respect. I think people who've been successful, or companies that have been successful, was able to understand that you can make money, but you need to adapt your operating model or the way that you think. And then, as I said, really it goes back for me to respect.
Yeah. No, thank you, Jaco. That makes sense. So if we focus on some pitfalls for doing business in Africa, if you can think randomly, what do you think are some of the biggest threats or pitfalls for doing business in Africa?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, depending on obviously where you're coming from, where you're going to, the main issue is assumptions. There's a lot of assumptions. So you assume that a lot of things will be there. It's not there. As I said, very practical is to say, show me, don't tell me. A lot of the research that's been done worldwide with the best intentions, it's many times focused on Europe or America or Far East, where there's a lot of data available. Data in Africa is generally, I think data is there, but it's scarce, and it's not always accurate enough. So people, to look at an economic report and then make a call based on that, for example, can really get you into deep trouble. In banking, for me, 2 things is typically costs and obviously in our case provision. So to lend out money is easy, to collect it is a challenge. But then, as I say, costs. If you have to start thinking about running generators to have fuel, or you have to provide water, or you have to provide transport services or whatever, which typically does not really in South Africa. I know South Africa's got challenges lately with power, but generally those are the type of things. So your cost of doing business is quite high. Then other issues around labor. I think labor is a lot easier in the rest of Africa, outside of South Africa. Not so much of legislation. There are legislation, but it's a lot more relaxed, I think, than what we used to.
If I can ask you another question, and it's a bit wider than just the African context. How do you see the future of banks and this world of cryptocurrencies that we are moving in?
Okay, for me, I think there will always be banks, but I think, and again, I'm purely talking on my own behalf. I'm not talking on behalf of my bank or my group. There's always been banks. I always said banking for me is simple. There's people who's got too much money, and there's people who's got too little money, and there's somebody in the middle, which is a bank, which is the middleman, making sure that people get return on their money, or people can borrow money. So I don't think that will ever change in the world. I think what will change is perhaps the way in which the format of banks, if I can call it that, because a lot of it's now changing to payments. So cryptocurrency for me, and I'm not the most technical guy on these things, but I think in time, the question is how long it will take. It will become like a currency. So instead of paying dollars, say for the supplier, you will use cryptocurrency. So on the one hand, it's a payment methodology, but on the other hand, it's a currency that will compete with the likes of, let's say, dollar, euro, pound, rand, whatever, kwacha, whatever the case might be. So whether governments actually will allow it and whether regulators will allow it, I think that's where the challenge is coming in. So there's a lot of gray area that still has to be covered, specifically with regards to cryptocurrency. I think we've seen also some big banks are very much in favor of it, and some other big banks are very much against it. So typically, I think if banks view it as a threat, they will try and block it as where they can, and when they see it as a potential channel or as I said, currency, then obviously they might adopt it.
Thanks, Jaco. So I cannot resist the last question, and that is more on MBAs. Jaco, you're also an MBA graduate, but my question is, what makes an MBA still relevant in specifically in the African context? What do you want to see it needs to do to be relevant?
Well, I mean, I'm a little bit subjective because I've got an MBA myself. In my own case, I've studied something totally different than finance or banking. And the benefit I had was for the MBA that actually gave me like a crash course across a large number of business-related topics. And obviously, it was also so knowledge is the one thing, but it also shows to potential employees that you've got the ability to process a lot of information across various things. I mean, we just had yesterday in our own company a career planning discussions with all of my exco members, and I think many companies are going to find that you typically get a lot more specialists nowadays. So you're either a finance specialist, HR specialist, operations, risk and compliance. The thing is, when you want to make progress, unless you become a specialist in a particular area, but if you want to make progress in terms of the bigger companies to become like a CFO or even nowadays a CIO or CEO, it's very difficult if you don't have that broader sort of background. I mean, as I said, also when I started in banking, I started as a teller. I worked through all the departments. So you've got an experienced background. But nowadays, a lot of graduates, like graduate programs, people might have a 3 or 6 months orientation, and then they start in a particular department. So very specialized. So for me, the real benefit of an MBA is the spread or to give you a broader background, an understanding. So as I said,
Jaco, thanks for your time this morning on this bonbon series of the business school. From my side, a special word of thanks, and I hope that it goes well in your position as CEO and with your bank and the endeavors in Africa. And once again, thank you for your time.
No, thank you, Jan. Only a pleasure. Nice to talk to you.